Carter has had a way of educating all of us. People think we're teaching Carter all the time, and we are to a degree, but he's always teaching us something. And he's teaching us to have patience, and he's teaching us to have a soft heart, and he's teaching us to probably walk this world with a little bit more of an open mindset to know that there are many that are struggling. And if we can lend a helping hand, it makes the world go round a lot better.
That's our guest this week, Blair Cornell. Blair is a financial advisor and founder of JoyRide, whose mission is to provide car rides for kids with special needs in incredibly special vehicles. Think Ferrari or Bugatti. Blair and his wife Kat have 4 children, including 9-year-old Carter, who has Dandy Walker syndrome. We'll hear the Cornell family story and more on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Here's your host, David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I'd also like to offer my heartfelt thanks to the following donors who supported the 21 CD Ironman campaign, who each contributed $1,000 or more to help keep our programs free to all concerned. In alphabetical order, they are Len Batterson, Ron Boxtaller, Anna and Greg Brown, the Canal Financial Group, Kim Duchessois, Chaz Edelstein, Chris and Christy Kazian, Bob Musikowski, the Peloton Dads Facebook group, Dick Reck, Kevin Richardson, and Tom Wake. Thanks for your generous support.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's listen in on this conversation between Blair Cornell and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Blair Cornell of Centerville, Ohio, who is a father of 4, a fellow financial advisor at UBS, and founder of JoyRide, a not-for-profit whose tagline is Kids, Cars, and Smiles. Blair, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
Well, thanks for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
You and your wife, Kat, have been married for 14 years and are the proud parents of 4 children, Caitlin, 11, 6-year-old twins, Brady and Davis, and Carter, 9, who has Dandy Walker syndrome, a brain malfunction caused by hydrocephalus. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
Well, David, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, which is where I live today. Since Centerville is a suburb of Dayton, so I couldn't get out of the booming metropolis of Dayton. It trapped me, and I even stayed in Ohio for college. I went to Ohio University over in Athens. This is my home base where I've known my whole life. My wife, Kat, and I met in college. She's from up near Cleveland in a small suburb called Medina. And so that's where the two of us met in college, and I recruited her back to Dayton as I'm in a family business here that she was very supportive of joining me for.
Great. And as I remember in a prior conversation, you're the middle of 3 children when you were growing up.
I am, and as I'm commonly referred to as the middle child and have the middle child syndrome. Never was number one on either mom or dad's list, so it's just always getting pushed and pulled in the middle.
So if I had to guess, you probably didn't have to share a bedroom, though.
No, I did have my own bedroom. You're right. I was fortunate to have my own room.
I was only guessing that because you have 2 sisters.
I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you joined a family business. So your dad's been in the business for how long?
My dad started in the finance business in 1973, financial services business over in Indianapolis, and then moved to Dayton in 1980, where he partnered with his cousin in 1980, who still teammates and partners today. So my dad has been in the business now for 47 years and not only been a great mentor, but one of my very best friends that I owe a lot to and teaching me a lot about our business.
That's fabulous. So I'm sort of curious to know, in addition to your dad being a business partner, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
Oh, it's exactly, my dad is a very close friend, one of my best friends, and we talk about everything together. probably one of my favorite things that we do is we're very open with each other. We're honest, and we're not afraid to have some good old-fashioned disagreements. And I think that's what's made our bond even stronger over the years. On a personal side, what probably one of my favorite things that my dad and I have done is every year we lay out the whole calendar, and we have a Cornell Cup golf match that we compete against all summer long. And it's just a way to know every week we get together, we play golf, and we share stories and we talk, and we invest more and more time in each other's lives. But it's a fun grudge match and rivalry that we have, and a good way for us to get together and share good stories.
That's interesting. So is he giving you strokes, or are you giving him strokes?
I do give him a couple strokes, although as I've had kids, my handicap has come up, and as he's had more time, his has come down. So the gap is narrowing for sure.
Sounds like a great family tradition that you guys have created.
It really is.
So as far as takeaways are concerned, is there some lesson or lessons that you've learned from your dad that sort of embody your relationship?
My dad has been very inspiring and influential in my life. He's been a role model for me, and probably the number one takeaway that I've seen is how he has treated my mom and treated my two siblings and me. And he has been an excellent father, but even a better husband. And I think that's admirable to see how he treats my mom, and they have such a great relationship. My mom's been through her fair share of ups and downs through medical issues, and he stuck by her the entire way. And that's just been inspiring to me as a younger man. And then what I've had to deal with my son, which we'll get to later, and how he's stood by her and has really been a great role model for me to see how I need to stand by my wife and my son and my family to make sure I'm the leader of the family, like he's always been for us.
That's fabulous. I've heard it often said that one of the most important things a man can do for his children is love their mother, right? And it sounds like that's exactly what you were just describing with your dad and your mom.
Yeah, he really has. He's always chosen her first, which is sometimes hard to think about, but it's the right path, and kids, I think, over time admire that.
So let's switch gears and talk about special needs, first on a personal level and then beyond. Curious to know, how did the Dandy-Walker syndrome diagnosis come about?
So Dandy-Walker syndrome, that Carter was diagnosed, I can remember the day, it was August 23rd, 2010. Kat and I were driving in for our 20-week ultrasound, and we'd already had Caitlin, a little girl, and so this was going to be our second child. And with Caitlin, we didn't find out if we were having a boy or girl. We were surprised, but with Carter, we were going to be finding out. Kat really wanted to. But when we went in for that 20-week ultrasound, not only did we find out we were having a boy, we found out everything about Carter and that diagnosis of Dandy-Walker. And I've heard a couple of different statistics, 1 in 30,000 or 1 in 50,000. But in either case, it's a very rare brain abnormality that's caused by a form of hydrocephalus, which is fluid around your brain. And while Carter was in utero, there's nothing that can be done until he's born, because that fluid is a pocket of pressure that's really, unfortunately, causing the brain not to grow and expand as well as it should have. But once he's born, then they placed a shunt in his head. And if you think of a shunt as like a straw that goes into the brain, it's all underneath the skin, and kind of runs a tube down all the way down into his stomach, and kind of helps to basically be a bypass, and helps to relieve that pressure. And then over time, his brain can now begin to try to grow and develop. But unfortunately, a lot of the damage had been done that they can't operate on before he's born. So
did they try to have an early birth then, just because of that, or not?
That's a great question. They don't. They wanted him to go full term because they didn't want him to be early term in any way, because that could cause other issues. So he was full term, which was very exciting, even though that was leaving him inside for a couple of weeks longer, but that was going to potentially help to prevent less problems from becoming an issue as well.
Okay. I'm just sort of curious, because it's almost like a preview. If you get that diagnosis before birth, there might be or might not be some choices to make. And I'm not talking about life choices. I'm just talking about from a medical standpoint, this path or that path. So thanks for being so transparent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So put yourself back in that point in time 9 years ago. What were some of the fears that you and Kat were reflecting on at that time?
Well, that was a time in my life that I would say was probably the hardest moment in my life. It was really where we hit rock bottom. But as a couple, we became tighter and tighter and probably became stronger than ever because we had no choice. That was a moment in our lives where we really had two choices. One, we could have run away from it and tried to hide, or we could really embrace it and become open and very transparent with others and become leaders in our community, that this was something we were going to embrace. We were viewing it as this was a gift that we were given, and we were chosen to have Carter, and we were going to do everything we could to take that opportunity and run with it.
That's fabulous. I'm sort of curious to know, was there some advice you got early on that helped you sort of process all this and get on the right path?
Well, we had a great team of people. So from the moment that we found out what was going on with Carter, we were referred to Cincinnati Childrens Hospital. We live in Dayton. Dayton Children's is an excellent hospital, but for what we were going to need, they weren't capable at the time. I think they now are, but at the time they weren't. So we went to Cincinnati, which is a fabulous hospital. And we went in and we had a full day of tests and studies done. And we sat down at the end of that day with about 12 different doctors and nurses that we'd met with that day. It was around a boardroom setting, and they'd gone through basically from head to toe exactly what they had seen. And that was a moment that was a very, very difficult moment because you're trying to look at everything that could be going wrong and things that could be right, and you're just speculating. But that team came alongside us and really helped us from that moment forward until Carter was born, and it's still the same team we operate with today.
Wow.
But I think what helped us to have that comfort was not only having that team in place, but it was having a very good family network around us and a lot of close friends. And we were very strong in our faith and knew that this was going to be an opportunity for us to take this as a challenge and really make the most of it.
Yeah, well, what a great testimony. What I heard you say, maybe not in the same order, is that it was your faith, your family, and your friends that were there to support you as well. And without one or all of those, it would be really difficult to shoulder some of life's adversities. So that's fabulous.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
So were there some important decisions along the way that you've had to make as relates to what to do or what was in Carter's best interest?
Yeah, there's been a lot of decisions, from the moment he was born, we had to make decisions, but a lot of those decisions were being made by the physicians on what they could see and where they felt like we really had the best chance for success. I remember them doing hearing tests and vision tests. And, when they're a newborn, it's difficult, but they have different ways they can get readouts to see. And we were just checking things off, saying, okay, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. Or this is something we need to pay attention to. But over time, as he continued to progress, we had to keep making more and more decisions. But fortunately, Kat was able to be home with him. I was working and running a business, and she was staying home with him and really managing his care. And she is extremely competent and capable, and became even more competent and capable at handling his care and overseeing all of his care. And a lot of that really came in with different physical therapy and occupational therapy and speech therapy. And then over time, as he's had to have different surgeries, we've had to make decisions based on what we thought would be best for his current progress and where we thought he would be down the road.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. And not to focus on the negative, but I'm wondering if there have been some challenges along the way that you've encountered.
Oh, it's a roller coaster ride. As we all know, life is a roller coaster ride for everybody. So it's not just us. I joke with people all the time and say, when we had Carter, we got on the roller coaster, but there was no getting off. So we're on this ride and this journey together. And fortunately, we've had a lot more ups than we have downs, but we've certainly had our fair share of downs. I would say probably the one that sticks out the most was when Carter was, I guess he would have been about 5 years old, almost six. He had a big hip surgery. Carter was in a wheelchair and he was starting to walk with a walker. And the orthopedic surgeons could see he was really going to need to have hip surgery. Eventually, he was going to have back surgery. And he was also had already had and would have more surgeries on his feet. So lots of areas to get him to continue walking and progressing. When he went in for that hip surgery, we didn't realize it at the time, but he had walking pneumonia.
Oh.
And it was undetected. And so walking pneumonia is something that's very hard to detect, but he came out of the surgery, everything went well, but he now had pneumonia and was flat on his back and couldn't get up because he had just had hip surgery, which was a problem. Anybody who's had pneumonia or you know anything about it, you know you need to be up and moving and coughing to get that fluid out. And he wasn't able to do that. So that progressively got worse and worse and really sent us into a little bit of a tailspin. And we ended up being in the hospital for almost 2 months.
Oh, my God.
And later we found out that many of the doctors were huddling on the side, not sure if he was going to pull through that or not, because it was getting to become such a problem. Fortunately, that was not the case. We were able to have a very good turnaround, and Carter came home. And since then, he has been on an upward trajectory, not only moving from a wheelchair to a walker, but now he takes a lot of unassisted steps and really can walk to and from places holding your hand far better than I ever would have expected. In fact, I believe that's how we connected. Was you saw the post I put on LinkedIn of him walking on a bike path, and he was out walking in front of our family, which was somewhat symbolic that he was leading our family on that walk that morning, which was very moving.
Yeah, that was very moving. And it was a friend that shared it with me, but that was my first encounter with you.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's right.
So very inspiring. So thanks for sharing. So I'm sort of curious to know what impact Carter's situations had on his siblings, your marriage, or the rest of your family for that matter.
That's a very good question. And Carter has impacted and influenced us all. Carter has had a way of educating all of us. People think we're teaching Carter all the time, and we are to a degree, but he's always teaching us something. And he's teaching us to have patience, and he's teaching us to have a soft heart, and he's teaching us to probably walk this world with a little bit more of an open mindset, to know that there are many that are struggling. And if we can lend a helping hand, it makes the world go round a lot better. And I think Carter's siblings, which he has an older sister and two younger brothers, will be far better people in this world as they grow up, just like Kat and I will be, because of the influence that Carter's had on our lives.
Yeah, that's fabulous. It's just so refreshing to hear that. So again, thanks for sharing. I'm wondering if there's any supporting organizations beyond those that you've mentioned, including the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, all the private therapists you've had with occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. Have there been any other organizations that you, your family, or Carter's benefited from?
Carter's benefited from just having involvement in other organizations where he's been able to be part of a community. And I think that's what gives him motivation, is when he can really be engaged and around others, which is why he thrives so much at school, being in a classroom and having the opportunity to engage with others. So there's been a lot of different organizations that he's been able to be part of. I'll tell you one that comes to mind that's a very neat concept, and I'm sure it's in a lot of cities. There's a baseball field that was converted to a special needs field, and it has a rubber floor rather than a dirt or grass. And it's basically built for wheelchairs and walkers. So they can go and play baseball, and they can run the bases or walk the bases or wheel the bases like any of us could, and have that feeling of being a part of something. So there's been a lot of different organizations like that Carter's had the good fortune to be part of, that people don't realize how meaningful that is to these kids until they see their faces really light up, I think.
That's fabulous. So he enjoys sports then?
He does, yeah. His favorite thing to do right now is to swim. He does swim lessons with a lady that's just fabulous with him, and he is just all about being in the water.
So you may or may not be aware of this. There are two dads in the network that have been involved with scuba therapy, taking people with disability scuba diving. It might be a little bit premature since he's only 9, but it's another reminder that never say never.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing what some people are able to do. And I was so inspired by this. One of them is called diveheart.org. It's been around for about 20 years. And I was so inspired. I love to scuba dive, by the way, that one of my daughters and I were DiveHeart trained to be buddy divers. So you go for a week, you're being trained to work with, at least in our training, with 3 different groups of people. Those that are paraplegics, so usually don't have any use of their lower limbs, their legs. Quadriplegics, which is like an inconceivable thing that somebody who's got quadriplegia would, go scuba diving, and then blind people. And the most impactful thing was when you were role playing. So if you and I were, doing this together, okay, it's your turn, Blair, to be the blind person. So they put the mask on and, put something in it so you can't see. And then I've got to instruct you, a person that can't see, how to go from point A to point B, how to put your equipment on, and then actually go underwater and communicate when somebody has, not have use of one of their senses, either the mobility or their sight in this case. So it's very profound. Anyway, just something to, plant a seed and see if it germinates years down the road, particularly if he loves the water.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'll have to check that out. That would be quite the thrill.
Something to look forward to potentially.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears and talk about some of the advocacy that you've been doing the last few years. And one of the things that I was really inspired by when I learned about your story is this not-for-profit that you helped create called JoyRide. And I made reference to it earlier in the introduction that the tagline is Kids, Cars, and Smiles. I'm sort of curious to know what the backstory is on that and how that all came about.
Well, I'm glad you asked. If my wife were here with me, she'd be saying, oh my goodness, we're going to hear about JoyRide again, because it's the common joke in our family. That's all I talk about, because it is a passion of mine. Cars have always been a hobby, and this has become a big passion. So ever since I was a kid, I've loved cars, and it's always been something I've enjoyed to do for myself. But where it really came about was in 2016. I was driving home from work. I walked in the house, and Kat looked at me and said, "You've got to help me." And I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Carter is beside himself." And I said, "Well, how can I help?" And she said, "You got to try to calm him down." And so I walked over. He was sitting at the kitchen table watching some videos on his iPad. And I said, "Carter, what's going on?" And he was just beside himself. And I couldn't get him to calm down. I couldn't get him back on track. So I looked at him and I said, "Carter, do you want to go for a ride in Daddy's convertible?" And I had a convertible that we had had some fun with. And he looked up at me, David, like the light switch was flipped. And he looked right at me and said, "Let's go." And I said, "All right." So I picked him up and I carried him out to the garage. And I still can feel to this day his little chin bouncing along on my shoulder. This little 6-year-old guy that I was just carrying along out to the car. And I strapped him in. And we must have driven around that night for almost an hour. And as I watched his face just light up as the wind was blowing through his hair and we were listening to music, all of his pain and all of his frustrations were just gone. And it had really not only transformed him, but it transformed me that night to realize there's something to this. We all have triggers in our lives when we're frustrated or we're mad or we're upset or just kind of in a little bit of a funk. That can kind of get us back on track, whether that's music or cars. And for Carter and I, we love cars. That's just the one thing we love to do more than anything is go for a car ride. And so I started playing with this and kind of doing a little more work with it and realized I've got to make this happen. I got to do something with this because there's so many other kids out there that need this in their life. I'm confident. So all fall, I talked about it with Kat. I talked about it with lots of friends and family. And by the end of 2016, we had created our nonprofit called JoyRide. And it was going to be a car club exclusively for kids with special needs. And quite simply, we're just taking kids for rides to create joy in their lives. We're not doing research or funding or anything. It's just a simple task of finding some amazing cars and putting these kids in these cars to be able to have joy in their lives, to kind of forget about the world and some of their frustrations for the day. And so at JoyRide, we've had 5 events. We launched it in 2016. The first event got underway in 2017. And then we had 2 events in 18 and 2 in 19. Unfortunately, we couldn't have any this year with everything going on. But at a JoyRide event, kids will come in at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. They'll get to see some amazing cars from 9 to 10. And at 10 o'clock is when we have the national anthem and we get to start the engines. And we have a track that we lay out in an enclosed parking area where each kid gets to go for a ride in the car typically that they get to choose. And it's maybe a 10 to 12-minute ride and some amazing cars from a really, really amazing group of people that are willing to bring them.
So just so our listeners have a better idea of what you're referring to when you say amazing cars, just give me a sample or a taste test of what you've been able to do to inspire some of your friends with some of these high-end vehicles.
Yeah, so here's what I'll say about cars before I talk about what we have at JoyRide. Everybody's car is important to them. I don't care if it's really expensive or not, or it's old or it's new. It's your car, and so it's your baby and it's your toy. It's what you brings joy to your life. So not one car is better than the other. When I thought about JoyRide, I wanted to try to make it as unique of an experience as I possibly could. So I wanted to have cars that you didn't typically see on the road every day. So when they came to JoyRide, it was their opportunity to see Ferraris and Lamborghinis and McLarens and Maseratis. And these are cars, at least in Dayton, Ohio, that just aren't rolling around all the time. And when they come to this event, they get to see these cars, and they're really, really rare, and they're very unique, and they really create a wow moment, not only for the kids, but for their parents and a lot of the siblings that come too. They're jealous that they want to jump in the car as well.
That's fabulous. And how is it that you attract the car owners to participate?
You know, when I first started with this idea, that was the question everybody would say is, well, that's a great idea, but where are you going to find those cars? They're not in Dayton. And I said, oh, yeah, they are. I just got to go find them. So for the first summer, I spent a lot of time going to different car shows, and I would go around and, quite frankly, just walk up and handpick people, tell them the story and share the vision. And most guys and gals would say, I'm in. So I recruited a dozen cars for the first event. We had a really, really great lineup of Ferraris and Lamborghinis and a couple cool Vipers and everything else. But I'll tell you, at our events, I'm not sure who's having more fun. Everybody thinks the kids are having the most fun, but I see some of these drivers and they are just having a ball driving their cars around. And the volunteers clapping for them and cheering too are having a blast. So I'm not sure. It's a tie. I think everybody's having a pretty good time.
Yeah, well, that's very inspiring. And if you do have a super nice car, whether it's a new car or maybe it's a vintage car, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're sort of in the process for years of buying and fixing up like 66 convertible Mustangs. And you don't see those every day, at least not in our neck of the woods. And we had a lot of fun with those. And whether it's something more modest in price or something more exotic like you were referring to, people that have those cars are not like coveting them and like keeping them in their garage so nobody can see them. They'd like to share those experiences. And I think you really tapped into something.
I do too. Thank you, David. It's been a lot of fun. And you're exactly right. These car owners are extremely generous, not only with their time, but they want to share. And the car community is a great community. They are very giving people, and they love to talk about their car and share their car and experience their car. So you're exactly right.
Yeah, well, I love it. So do you have a vision for what JoyRide might become? It's there in your community there in Dayton. Have you thought about trying to expand this throughout Ohio or beyond?
So if you ask me, I always have a vision that's pretty far and wide. If you ask Kat, she gets nervous when I answer this question. So I'm always a glass half full and an optimist and a little bit of a dreamer. But JoyRide, for my vision last year, was to get it into another city. And we took it to Cincinnati, which is a nearby city. So that was somewhat an easy test for us because I had some connections there. It wasn't too far. And it worked, and it was our best event, in my opinion, yet. It was our biggest. It was our best. We had 30 cars. It was an amazing venue. It just rocked. It was really a great day. So when I do that, it gets me inspired to see where else can we go. And with me being a young father of 4 kids with a business, this is something I do on the side. So I think I could take it into another 2 or 3 cities that are neighboring, Columbus, maybe Indianapolis, different areas that are nearby. But in order to really get it to go where I would like it to go and where I think it could go, it really is going to take the right people coming alongside and really a team of people that help me to really launch it. Because I would love to see it in every city across the country, because there's kids out there that need this and they want this. And I just don't know how to do it all by myself unless I have that team of people that come alongside me. And as you know, with any nonprofit, funding tends to be the root of everything. And if we can secure funding over time, that'll open up more doors and opportunities for us to keep expanding.
So I'm sort of curious to know if somebody wants to get involved, from a family with a child or a car owner or a volunteer, is there a process for doing that?
It's very easy. Thank you for asking. You go to our website, joyridecars.org, joyridecars.org. And right on the website, there's a section just towards the top. You scroll down a little bit, it says get involved. And there's 3 ways you get involved. You can become a member. The kids are the members. There's no cost to become a member. Once you're a member for life, basically. JoyRides for Kids is ages 3 to 22, because we have to have some parameters. But once kids turn 23, we don't say goodbye. We have other opportunities for them to still stay involved. You can bring your car, any car that you think would fit. You fill out the form, and we'll let you know if it's a good fit or not for what these kids are looking for. It's not us. It's what the kids are asking for. And then lastly is if you're saying, hey, I don't have a child like this that would benefit, or I don't have a car, you can simply donate your time by clicking the Donate My Time button. So it's very easy to go on the website and see all that, or you can just follow us on social media. Typically, JoyRide Cars is where you can find us.
Excellent. So now I'm thinking about advice, and I'm wondering if there's any important takeaways that come to mind, advice that you might provide about raising a child with differences.
And I like how you said that, because I tend to use the word differing abilities, and you said differences, and I think that's well said. We all have differing abilities. So the advice that I would offer would be to never lose hope and never give up. This is a forever changing world. Medicine is getting better all the time. Therapies are continuing to advance. But I think the best way you can do that is just continually try to keep pushing forward and making it better.
That's fabulous. So I'm sort of curious to know, why is it that you've agreed to be a mentor father as part of the Special Fathers Network?
I think when I look at who's mentored me, my own father, Don Solon, they've left a lasting imprint on my life, and they've helped to shape me, and I could never repay them for that. And I'll tell you a story, and I think that's the easiest way I can articulate what I want to be able to pay forward is when I was first learning to play golf. My dad and I play golf all the time, as I mentioned, and my dad and I love to go out and play golf together. And I was a little boy, he took me out for the first time, and he teed off, and then I would tee off where his ball was out in the fairway. And then I would play in from there. But the first time we were playing, my ball went into the sand trap on one of the holes, and I didn't know what to do. And I looked at him, confused as a little kid would, as you can imagine. And he said, Blair, here's how you're going to hit this shot. You're going to stand like this, you're going to hold the club like this, and you're going to follow through like this. Sounded pretty easy, and I thought, okay, here I go. And then he kind of tapped me, and he said, but the most important thing you have to remember about being in the sand trap is when you leave that sand trap, you leave it looking better than when you walked in and the way you found it. And I didn't understand that as a 5 or 6 year old at the time, but I understand it loud and clear now. And that is how my dad has lived his life, is he has looked at this world as an opportunity, in people's lives as an opportunity to find a way to leave them looking better than the way that he found them, by mentoring them, by helping them. And that has given me a lasting imprint in my life that I'll never forget. And I can pay that forward through other people that may be going through a similar challenge.
I love that story and the imagery that comes to mind. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's give a special shout out to Tony Uman of Fidelity Charitable and coincidentally Special Fathers Network podcast ad, literally number one, for helping connect us. He was the one that turned me on to your video.
That's right. I do remember that. Yes, sir. That's right.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I think this has just been great. I really appreciate the opportunity for you to ask about my life. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with how my life has opened up an opportunity to create JoyRide, and how we at JoyRide are creating a community of people to be able to give back in a big way. And I would love to have more people that want to be part of that and give back in a big way, whether it's a car or it's through your child or it's just simply through your time. And even if you're not inspired to jump into JoyRide or you don't live nearby, there are communities or there's opportunities in your community where you can do the same thing, and you can have an impact in somebody's life that could change them forever.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing. If somebody wants to learn more about Dandy Walker syndrome, JoyRide, or perhaps just contact you, what would you suggest?
The easiest way to probably contact me, since I do a lot of that through JoyRide, is just come through the JoyRide website. That would be the easiest. If you go to joyridecars.org, there's a contact form. I read all of those. So if it's regarding JoyRide or anything regarding what my son has gone through, I'm using JoyRide as an opportunity to create a community that we can meet more people that we have common bonds with. Excellent.
Well, what we'll do is we'll be sure to include the website in the show notes, so it'll make it easy for listeners to follow up with you.
That'd be great.
Blair, thank you for taking the time and many insights. As a reminder, Blair is just one of the dads who's a part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation. I would really appreciate your support. Blair, thanks again.
You're very welcome, David. It's my pleasure.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stcenturydads.org. That's 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Reuben Law for supporting the Dad to Dad podcast. Call Reuben Law at 847-279-7999 and mention the Special Fathers Network for a free consultation. 847-279-7999.